Chad Goodman here, music director of your Elgin Symphony Orchestra, and I'm excited to take all of you on a little deep dive into the program that the Symphony will be presenting on November 9th and 10th at the Hemmons Cultural Center. This program will have 3 works on it from 3 very different composers who are all doing extraordinary things at the end of the 19th century into the 20th century. The first composer on the program is Samuel Coleridge-Taylor. Out of England, Coleridge-Taylor was a young prodigy, and he came to rise to incredible acclaim thanks to the recognition of the great English composers that came before him, particularly Elgar. Now, Elgar, at the end of the 19th century, was possibly the most famous English composer, and he had been commissioned by a famous UK music festival, the Three Choirs Festival, to write a new piece of music. Well, Elgar was so busy at the time that he in fact turned down the commission but said, you know what, in my place, you should commission this young talent that I've come across. This Samuel Coleridge-Taylor is his name. He's in his 20s. He's doing great things. And so they commissioned a work, which was the Ballade in A minor. And this work was a smash hit. For those of you in Elgin who were joining us at the Symphony, this was in May 2023 for the season finale. We actually performed, it was my first time working with the orchestra. We opened the program with that Ballade in A minor. So this piece was a huge success at this Three Choirs Festival where it was commissioned. And so it encouraged them to immediately commission more music from Coleridge-Taylor. What would come next would be probably the most famous set of compositions in the composer's entire career. And what he did is he wrote not 1, not 2, but 3 cantatas, works for vocal soloist, choir, and orchestra to be performed on stage that were all based on the epic poem, The Song of Hiawatha, from the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Now, as soon as he had read these poems, or this one large grand poem, Coleridge-Taylor was so inspired that he immediately set to work writing this story and creating a musical version of it. He loved it so much, he actually named his child Hiawatha. So this was such an important story and poem for Coleridge-Taylor. And he wrote these 3 cantatas telling this beautiful, beautiful story focusing on the Native American community in the United States. And the first work in particular, the first of these 3, was a smash hit, one of the most widely performed works written by an English composer for many years to come. It was a very, very big deal. In addition to these 3 cantatas, he also wrote an additional overture, and that is what we're going to be performing, the Overture to the Song of Hiawatha, an absolutely beautiful, beautiful piece that showcases sweeping melodies, gorgeous, heroic brass fanfare figures. It opens very quietly. You're going to hear gorgeous harp arpeggiations happening, and this leads into oboe taking over with this really sweet singing melody. It's a gorgeous way to just blossom into a program, and the piece is such a joy to perform and to rehearse. This piece is just written very naturally for the orchestra, and this is an important thing I like to discuss when we talk about what makes a composer great, right? Do they write great melodies? Do they have interesting ideas? Do they find inspiration in unique ways? These are all important, but I think from a performer's perspective, what is particularly enjoyable is when you find a composer who intimately knows the ins and outs of an instrument, and every instrument, how they're written for, basically how to effectively write. You can write a piece of music not knowing much about the instruments in the symphony orchestra, and unfortunately, sometimes that can get in the way of your musical ideas and concepts. You might not fully understand the range of the bassoon, or you don't have places to breathe that are well written for the wind players, or you don't write for strings in a way that's natural to the instrument, and they're having to do string crossings with a tremendous amount of consistency, which is very difficult technically and gets in the way of flow. So I say all of this because Coleridge-Taylor, at a very young age, this piece was written in 1899, the Overture to the Song of Hiawatha, was already writing just in such a professional and deeply understood way for the orchestra. And so this piece is going to kick things off on this program, and I'm really excited for all of you to hear it. This then leads into another work a great work from the Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg, his piano concerto. Now, he wrote this piece in 1868. He was 24 years of age when he wrote it, which is the exact age that Coleridge-Taylor was when he wrote that overture to the song of Hiawatha. Now, Grieg's concerto is the only concerto he wrote. This piano concerto is the only one he wrote in his entire career, and it came very early. It was deeply inspired by Robert Schumann, and specifically Schumann's piano concerto, which was also written in the exact same key. And you can find many parallels, but like so much of Grieg's music, when we think of Peer Gynt Suite, so often he found inspiration in Norwegian folk music, the sounds of his homeland, and he would inject them into his orchestral writing. The piano concerto does have aspects of that. You could hear in the last movement styles that lean towards the fiddle playing, the folk violin playing that you would find in Norway at the time, as well as specific dance styles too. But overall, this is a very traditionally classical, romantic concerto. We are so lucky that for this work, we have the incredible soloist Joyce Yang joining us. And Joyce is a Grammy-nominated pianist, has played with just about every orchestra you could think of in this country and so many around the world, an incredibly gifted artist, and something that I always find fun to talk about when putting together a concerto is the relationship between the conductor and the soloist in a concerto. Because often, let's say for that overture or a symphony where it's full symphony orchestra and conductor, my role as a conductor is to help sort of shape the vision and lead the orchestra through one particular path in the piece. But when it comes to a concerto, you now have someone else involved, a soloist, who really will dictate the flow of the piece, the tempos that they believe it should be taken at, and where they're going to push and pull, maybe phrasing, ideas, articulation. And so it's so fun to come together with a soloist, and we'll typically meet before the very first orchestra rehearsal where we all come together. We'll meet one-on-one. I'll have the soloist play through either passages of the piece. Sometimes, if it's a lesser-known concerto, we'll have the soloist play through the entire concerto, and I'll listen, and I'll take notes, and I'll just conduct sort of and sing the orchestra parts. You don't want to hear that. It's not nowhere near as pretty as what you hear with a full orchestra, but it's really important for us to be able to get on the same page and say, hey, how much time do you want to take here? Or how fast do you push in the allegro? There's just so many nuances that come to coordinating between the solo instrument, in this case the piano, and the full symphony orchestra. And me as the conductor, I'm sort of the conduit, I'm the in-between point person to make sure that everything is homogenized and on the same page with what the soloist's vision is. So Joyce has played this piece so many times over the years, and it'll be our first time working together. So it's going to be such a fun experience to just come together, and she'll have her way of going through it, and I'll have, through all of my preparation and experience with this piece, concepts for how to move through it, tempos, pacings, but I will ask her for hers first, and we'll go from there and just tailor it and the work we do with the Elgin Symphony so that it really showcases Joyce and her vision for this piece exactly as she wants. It's going to be a showstopper piece. There's a reason this concerto is one of the most famous and most performed piano concertos ever. I mean, to think that this was his only one, you wonder sometimes, like, he wrote it when he was 24 and he didn't touch the concerto genre again for the rest of his life. Did he think, oh my God, this was flash in a pan, this was just like a one-hit wonder, so to speak, in this genre? Or maybe he was just busy with so many other commissions and other pieces, but it really has withstood the test of time, and to have been written in 1868 and it's still in 2024 one of the most beloved concertos really says something about it. The last piece on the program is Antonín Dvořák's Seventh Symphony. Now, Dvořák, Czech composer, beloved. Many of you would think of, when you think of Dvořák, you think of the New World Symphony, the Ninth Symphony, which he wrote while he was inspired living and working in the United States, deeply inspired by the musical traditions that came here, both from African-American spirituals as well as Native American music. And Dvořák was very famous for saying, I think America, if they're going to have success in classical music, it's going to be embracing this music from the people, the natives that have been here. And so he really did set a tone for what American music would become, even though he was Czech and he didn't live his entire life in the US. His Seventh Symphony is probably his darkest symphony, but it's absolutely stunning. And the melodies, like so often in his symphonies, are just unbelievably memorable. Dvořák is often cited as being perhaps the greatest melodist, the greatest writer of melodies. He just had such a gift for this aspect of composition, of writing something that just sticks in your head, just, you know, an earworm, as we like to call them. And this symphony is filled with them. The music, he sort of found inspiration through the Czech nation and the Czech people who were in a struggle and in turmoil at the time. And he wrote this piece, and he said when he got inspiration, it was to sort of almost represent the Czech nation and the people and how strong and resilient they were, and that they could overcome any obstacles that came in their way. Now, the music isn't based on as many folk melodies like his later symphonies, like the 8th and the 9th, the New World Symphony would be, but these melodies are extraordinary nonetheless. Each movement has such unique characters, beautiful writing, incredible orchestration, the colors he creates within the orchestra. And colors is kind of an abstract thing when we talk about it. What does it mean to have certain colors in the orchestra? Well, it's how a composer pairs and balances different instruments coming together, whether it's they're uniting, playing the same melody together in unison, and you might have some strings and some winds and maybe a brass instrument, or the way that the harmonies come together, just how they build with these Lego pieces, so to speak, of music, the building blocks we have of composition. And this piece is filled with so many colors, and it really does dive from the most sort of inner looking, struggling kind of experiences that Dvořák was trying to depict, all the way to the most joyful and hopeful ones that you could ever hear. This piece holds a special place in my heart. I think it's Dvořák's greatest symphony, might be his greatest work, in my opinion. And the Elgin Symphony Orchestra, I know players are very excited. It hasn't been performed in Elgin in many, many years, and this piece deserves so much attention. Like so many great pieces from the master composers, it came sort of very quickly to Dvořák. He heard the melody of the first movement popped into his head very, very quickly while he was out traveling, and he sketched things out very, very quickly. It came together into what would become this unbelievably impactful symphony. These three pieces, Coleridge-Taylor's Overture to the Song of Hiawatha, the Grieg Piano Concerto with our soloist Joyce Yang, and Dvořák's Seventh Symphony, I think all showcase really important voices that were coming out of Europe at the end of the 19th century into the 20th century. Three composers who have very unique ways of writing for the orchestra, very memorable ways though. This music is gorgeous, it's heartfelt, it's deeply emotional, and I have no doubt that all of you are going to really connect with this program. We can't wait to see all of you on November 9th and 10th at the Hemmings Cultural Center for our presentations of this gorgeous music. See you there.